All right, guys, we are back in my garage for another video, and today we're finally going to start upgrading the brakes on my F30 340i. Now, this is something where I've been tracking my car for the past 2 years on the stock brakes with just upgraded pads, and it's been working great, but it's time to take things to the next level and upgrade to the brakes from an F80 and F82, M3, and M4. Now, the good news is this swap is pretty simple, especially on my car. On the front, it comes with 370 millimeter rotors with 4 piston calipers, and the F80 M3 comes with the same calipers, just with a larger rotor. And there are adapters available that we can use to space out our calipers so that it can fit the larger rotors to get better cooling and overall better performance. And of course, it just looks a lot better as well. Now, shameless plug, I do sell these adapters, so if you guys are interested in doing a similar swap, send me an email at kern417yt@gmail.com, and I'll send you all the information you need so I can ship you out a set. I'm shipping worldwide, and I should have them pretty much available at all times. But that being said, we're going to go ahead and hop over to my 340i. I'll show you guys how to swap the front brakes with the F80 M3 brakes, and hopefully you guys find this video useful. Now, as always, for everybody that's new to the channel, I create these videos to help keep you updated on the latest developments in our community, as well as discuss technical topics so that we have a better understanding of how our engines work. So if you're interested in more videos like that, be sure to subscribe because there will be a lot more coming out in the future. All right, so obviously to start everything off, you need to have the car jacked up in the air with the reel removed, and it should look something like this. Now, I have the 370 millimeter front brake setup on my 340i. If you have the 340 millimeter brake setup, we do also have adapters for that as well. And I made a DIY a couple years ago on my 440i showing how that adapter installs. Now, this one doesn't actually have a bracket. We're simply going to replace these bushings in the caliper. And you can see it's an eccentric bushing, so the hole isn't centered. And all this does is basically bias the caliper to push it out 5 millimeters so we can fit the 380 millimeter F80 rotor setup. So this one is pretty straightforward. It just has this bushing, a little spacer, and a bolt to install. So let's go ahead and get all of this stuff removed. The first thing we need to do, or at least that I recommend, is trying to remove the set screw on the rotor. So it should be a 6 millimeter Allen, you can see here. And on the other side, I did the other side already, and this bolt was stuck and ended up being a big pain. So definitely try to take this one out first. And if it is stuck, at least you know you need to hit it with PB Blaster or whatever, and you're not stuck with this bolt in your hub and making it a nightmare like my other side was. Now, next we're going to remove the brake pads from the caliper before we remove the caliper itself. So what you need is a pin and a hammer. Knock this out. Top and bottom. There is a little spring here holding tension onto the caliper, so you might need to push it in a little bit, and then the pin should come the rest of the way out. Now, as we remove the brake pads, just keep in mind if your rotors are worn down a little bit, they're kind of set at a tighter position than they should be with the new rotors, because the new rotors will be, you know, the full thickness, and so you might need a little more space in here. So what I recommend is to try to retract the piston a little bit while you remove the brake pads, and that'll make the caliper slide on easier when you get the new rotors on. So we'll pull these out, and when it gets about halfway on this side, just pull it towards you, and that slides the piston in, and now you can see there's a lot more space. So same thing on the other side. Push the piston, and you can even try pushing them both at the same time, and then pull your brake pads out. Now, this is kind of hard to see in this position, but if you come back here, you will see there's a bolt right here, and there's another one down here. Focus, focus. There we go. So these two bolts need to be removed in order to take the caliper off. They are 18mm bolts, so take your time with them, but you should be able to get them out. And then just make sure you have something right here for the caliper so that hopefully it's not just hanging by the brake line. So I just have it sitting on an FCP Euro box, perfect for brake jobs. And then take your stock rotors off. Now at this point, we're going to go ahead and remove these bushings that are in the calipers. And again, in the last DIY, I showed you guys how to do it. So we're going to go ahead and do it the same way. What I did is I found a really long bolt that'll fit. I believe it's M12 by 1.5. Should be the same thread pitch as the stock bolts, just a lot longer. And then I'm also using my 32mm socket that I use for my oil filter housing when I do oil changes. And basically you push this through here and this becomes your bushing removal tool. So we're just going to thread this in to this hole, and once it gets fully seated, you can continue tightening the bolt and it's going to pull out the bushing while it's being tightened. So you can definitely do it by hand with like a socket or something. It's not a lot of fun, but I did it that way the first time. To make it easier this time, I'm just going to use an impact wrench and just zip it out. It takes like 10 seconds to do it that way. So then once you're done, it should look like this with a nice clean shiny surface. And inside of here, we have the stock bushing. So we'll do that for the top and the bottom. And then, yeah, so let me turn off the flash again. So it's easier to see, but the key here is to make sure the eccentric bushing hole is basically aligned to the bottom of the caliper. So it should be down here. So it's going to go in the same way, but this hole alignment affects which direction it's going. So what you might want to do, like while you're just looking at it, is draw like a little black line down here at the bottom to show that's the point. That should be like right here or right here. So go ahead, get it all lined up. Like so. And then what I did, just to be sure it doesn't move as I tighten it down, is I kind of started it with a mallet or a hammer. Just hit it in place a couple times. It'll go in there pretty good. And then basically just double check the alignment. I know it's kind of hard to see with the flash on or off, but basically the hole is aligned so that it's towards this point on the caliper. It should be all the way down here. So do that for the top and the bottom. And then of course you have a couple different options here. So you can do the same thing but in reverse to tighten it back down. Find a bolt that fits through these holes. Use your big, where is it? Your big socket, but just do it on the opposite side. So if you do it from here, tighten this down, it'll suck the bolt or suck the bushing into the caliper, and then you'll have that fully seated. What I did, just because it seemed a little bit easier for me, was I started mounting it. So if you put this up here and you put the bolt in it and just start tightening it down the same way that it would install, then it actually sucks that bushing in. So I don't know why, for me, that was a little bit easier than trying to suck it in from the other side. So again, do whatever works best for you. And this bolt is different than the stock one. It's a different thread pitch. So this is specific for the eccentric bushing because the hole has to be smaller so that it can have that directional aspect to it. So I'm just going to use the stock bolt instead of trying to find a bolt that fits in there and then tighten it with this one. All right, so now installation is pretty much just the reverse of removal. The first thing, of course, is to install the rotor. So thankfully I have wheel studs because this makes this a lot easier. Basically just line this up and slide it on. And as you can see, it's still a little bit loose, and we're gonna have to mount the caliper onto here. So there are a couple different things you can do. One is you can install the set screw that goes in this hole. There's two on the actual F8s, but on ours only one hole, so only one fits. And if you do that, then that'll obviously hold this in place. I don't want to do that because, like I said, the other side was stuck on me and I had to drill it out, so I don't feel like dealing with that in the future. So I'm just going to screw on this lug nut to hold it in place. If you have wheel bolts, you can do the same thing. Just screw two of your wheel bolts onto the actual rotor, and that'll hold it in place so it's not flopping around. Next, we're going to mount the caliper, and it installs just like it was removed, except don't forget these spacers. The issue is that the rotor is a different offset than the stock one, so it's actually pushed out a little bit from the center of the car. It's pushed out towards, the wheel. So we're going to put this spacer between the caliper and the knuckle, so that will space out the caliper and push it outwards as well. And then this will be centered right inside of the caliper. So it's kind of hard to see here, but I'll show you once I get everything put together how it looks. So the way that I do this is put the screws in, then go in and slide the spacers onto the screw behind the rotor, so it'll hold the spacer in place, and then line up the caliper and kind of hand tighten the screws onto it. Once you get them started, it should be good. It's just lining up the caliper. There we go. And then you can go ahead and tighten it to OEM spec. Now we're going to reinstall our brake pads, but if you have OEM pads or aftermarket ones that retain these, then you can go ahead and break those off because they will hit stock wheels and some aftermarket wheels. It just kind of depends on the barrel size. So yeah, I have the OEM 18s on my car. I'll show you guys how to fit them with the stock wheels. And in my case, I need to remove these. I know some people get worried about them, but these are my aftermarket pads that I run on the track, and they don't come with them. Never had issues. So what we're going to do is go ahead and just twist these off. The easiest way I found is just clamp down on them with some pliers and then twist. And it just breaks off. And then if you have a little piece in here like I do, you can just knock it out with a hammer. And then it pops out and just leaves the hole. So do that for all of these little weights. And then, yeah, just go ahead and slide them in. Again, it might be a little bit tight because these new rotors are the full thickness. So just take your time. Yeah, this side slides in fine, so I can push this one out to retract the piston, and boom. Then we'll put our pins back in with the retaining spring. Now the last thing you're going to need if you're running OEM 18-inch wheels and possibly 19-inch wheels as well is a spacer. And the reason isn't because of the diameter of the wheels. People always ask me if 18s fit. Yes, 18s fit fine. F80 and F82 BMWs came with an 18-inch wheel option. Look up 513M. But the issue is the spoke design. So on our OEM 18s and again some 19s, it hits the front of the rotor and scrapes right here. So we're removing this so it clears the 18-inch barrel, and then we're adding a spacer so that it clears the front of the rotor again, because we spaced it out to fit the offset of these new rotors. So I run Motorsports Hardware 15mm spacers. I'll have a link to them down in the description. Most people only really need a 5mm spacer. I just run a really aggressive one because I have a lot of camber, so I need a bigger spacer to kind of fill up the wheel well. But 5 or 10mm spacers should work fine for most people. And then after that, you're done. Reinstall your wheel, and you've got the front 380mm brakes. Look at those. Also, make sure your rotors are facing the right direction, because the actual vanes are directional. So the vanes match the drill pattern on the OEM one. So this is what your right side, passenger side rotor should be, and the driver side should face the opposite way. But when the wheel is turning, the holes should kind of go up, and that'll make the air flow outwards so that you get the correct cooling effect. But yeah, you can look up the part numbers as well, and it'll tell you which one's on the right and which one's on the left. And yeah, that's how the brakes install on your car. So after that point, you'll be able to take advantage of the larger F80 and F82 M3 and M4 rotors. Hopefully this helps you guys out. And again, keep in mind, I do sell these adapters. So if you guys are interested in upgrading your brakes, send me an email at kern417yt@gmail.com. Just put in the subject line that you're interested in the brake upgrade, and I'll send you guys all the details on how you can place an order. But yeah, for now, that's it for this video. So thank you guys for watching, and I hope this helps. And if you have any other questions or comments, leave them down below.